This Sunday we step out of the regular cycle of Masses during ordinary time because it happens that this Sunday is June the 24th, and this marks an important date in the Church's calendar from the early centuries of liturgical observance. We have the feast of the birth of John the Baptist, and indeed we find that many of the chants associated with this particular feast are quite ancient, including this communion. And this weekend's celebration is a good time to raise another interesting point about Gregorian chant, a question that many people ask. Where does this music come from? How did it come to be written and preserved? And in fact, if you could answer this question, you would have a PhD thesis and a career waiting for you in musicology, because it's a highly disputed question. What we do know is this: the Church has always had music at the liturgy and has always chanted things from Scripture, but we have no written records. But what is quite interesting is that in the 11th century and in the late 10th century, suddenly there's an explosion of written records. We have many, many manuscripts from this era, and what is interesting about these manuscripts is that they all, not all of them, but they tend to have widely varying ways of notating the music. And yet they all say the same thing, more or less. There are some variations between manuscripts that we find in France and in Germany and in Italy, but they're very minor. It's clear that the Church throughout the Western Latin-speaking Church was singing the same music in different monasteries and in different dioceses. But how the music was transmitted from one place to another, we really don't know. Some people think that this was done orally, by memory. We do have some interesting stories about cantors coming from Rome to meet with the cantors at Charlemagne's court in the early 9th century, and they didn't quite agree on how the music was supposed to go, but Charlemagne was interested in standardizing the music in his empire, and it's shortly after this time that we have these manuscripts appear. So, it's an interesting question. I'd like to propose one theory for you. As I mentioned, this communion is certainly an ancient one. There are indications of that. What we're going to do for you now is I'm going to sing a piece of the Alleluia chant from the same Mass, the chant that would be sung right before the Gospel. And then the brothers are going to help me sing a part of the communion. So first of all, I'm going to sing one portion of the Alleluia. The words are Altissimi vocaberis. You will be called of the Most High. Okay, and it sounds like this. Altissimi vocaberis. Okay, it's a bit clunky, to be honest with you. If you know Latin, this one, you can tell the music wasn't written for these words. Not only that, if you heard my translation of it, you realize that we're missing a word. You shall be called a prophet of the Most High. So it doesn't quite match up with the music very well. But listen to the music, the same music from the communion. Okay, this is from parare. Same exact music, just a little bit of a change to accommodate the syllables in the Alleluia. The communion is clearly earlier, so the Alleluia chant is based on the communion chant. And in fact, we also know that the Alleluia chant is introduced into the Roman liturgy later than the communion chant. Okay? So when the Alleluia was introduced, the cantors had to come up with all kinds of new music. Now, it seems at least possible, though this is only my conjecture and I'm not a full chant scholar, but it seems at least possible that this Alleluia is later than this communion and borrowed this music, because the music doesn't fit the words of the Alleluia quite as well. And what's interesting about the Alleluia is that the word Alleluia, when it is sung in itself, is a formula. We use this tune over and over again throughout the year. And again, this means that the verse, where we have the actual verse from the Canticle and the Gospels, is probably a later edition, and they used material already existing to make it work. We're going to sing for you one last time, Tu puer propheta Altissimi vocaberis, the communion for the solemnity of St. John the Baptist.